Hello, everyone. You are watching the March episode of First Look ETF. We are glad to have you with us. I'm Stephanie Stanton with ETF Guide. We have a stacked guest lineup for you. Here is what is coming up. A new ETF from Pabrai Wagons that aims to turn buying undervalued companies into an investable strategy. Plus, we will look at a new pair of ETFs from Pictet Asset Management with a high conviction strategy in top thematic areas like robotics and AI. And finally, we will look at the unique investment strategy of Truth Social ETFs. But first, before we go any further, let's welcome Bilal Little with the New York Stock Exchange. Bilal, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you with us.
Hey, Stephanie. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
As we always do, we're going to kick off the show here with the latest update on ETF launch activity. How are things looking?
Look, 2026 is off to a fantastic start with 137 new ETFs that have been listed. The one thing that I will say is investors are really looking for cutting-edge ideas. They're looking for AI stock-driven selection ETFs. They're looking for high-income strategies. And what's really going on right now is we also see strong demand for yield. The important note is active management is gaining momentum as investors continue to seek precision in their portfolios. We're seeing strong flows toward defense. We're seeing strong flows towards next-gen AI. And as I mentioned, continued themes around income. So I think that actually plays into what the macro and geopolitical situation is today.
Yeah, absolutely. And continuing on that trend, as the ETF market continues to evolve, what are some of the trends that you are seeing in terms of product launches and asset flows?
Yeah, look, the innovation is really exciting. So let me just talk about a couple of themes that we're seeing, and I'll call them big power shifts, if you will. So the first is we're seeing a huge cluster around innovation and next-gen technology, which basically is showing you that investor appetite is still looking at this theme as an opportunity. The second big theme is that I mentioned before is income. Income continues to dominate the launch scene, but also on the flow side of things. So we continue to see investors lean into that theme around options, buffered income, or auto-callable products as well. So as they continue to search for ideas, I think you will continue to see the environment shape up there. The third theme that I want to point out is really important is we're seeing a big tilt to active management. When you look at 9 out of the 10 launches, they're all active. So what you're seeing is the demand for precision in the portfolio and the interest in portfolio construction-based conversations. So if you string all that together, I think what you do see is innovation, income, and portfolio construction as the key themes in the marketplace today as we continue to see strong flows and launches in the ETF space.
Speaking of strength, we have a very strong guest lineup for this show. What are some of the topics that you're looking forward to most?
I'm excited about this particular show because we've got a very strong lineup. The perspectives range across the entire ETF ecosystem. So, look, this is a perfect conversation to set up one that's really dynamic when we're going to talk about managers like Truth Social that comes in with an American First suite of ETFs, everything spanning from defense, tech, energy, iconic brands, and real estate. And then we move on to a manager like Pictet, which brings in a global presence, over 200 years in their history with over 800 billion in assets. They are a really strong powerhouse that leans into deep research. So really excited about them as well. And then the third manager is Pabrai Wagons Advisors. Now they've done something that's unique, which is obviously they converted a mutual fund into an ETF, but they continue to lean into high quality, high conviction names, which will be a huge hallmark, I think, for them as they differentiate themselves in the rest of the market.
All right, sounds good. Bilal Little joining us from the NYSE. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. Keep up the great work, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, Stephanie.
And just a quick reminder to watch First Look ETF on Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Roku. We also simulcast on iTunes and Spotify, so be sure to check us out there as well. Well, the markets in 2026 are anything but uniform. From war in the Middle East to tariffs, market leadership is also in flux, and that has left some investors scrambling for durable strategies that can rise above the noise. Well, Pictet has been leaning into that challenge with a rules-based approach to quality and profitability. And here to tell us more now is Ben Becker, head of ETF distribution with Pictet Asset Management. Hi, Ben. Good to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. So your firm's management is known for high conviction themes. And what sets your thematic approach to megatrends like sustainability, AI, robotics, and automation apart from the pack?
It's a great question, Stephanie. I think a few things. One is our history. We were one of the earlier investors in thematic equities. We actually launched our first thematic strategy in 1995, so we've got over 30 years of themes now. We're also among the largest active thematic equity managers in the world, with over $70 billion in assets in 15 thematic strategies we run for clients, both wealth and institutional clients around the world. When we think about megatrends, they're long-term, I think 15-plus year mega trends affecting socioeconomics, sustainability, the economy, technology, whatever it may be, that we believe are going to have a big impact on people's lives. And when we think about our thematic strategies, we're really trying to capture those mega trends, see where they intersect with themes that are investable, and manage our clients' portfolios accordingly, with the belief that investing in those mega trends will lead to better portfolio outcomes for clients.
All right. And Ben, when it comes to AI and some of the companies that you guys are looking at, does that stretch across multiple industries, or are you specifically focused on technology in the tech sector?
It's a great question as well. So it does include technology and the traditional things we would think of when we think about AI and automation, but it is broader than that. You can also think of things like physical AI or physical automation, so industrial automation, even something like self-driving cars. Really, physical AI is what we believe the next step here. That's robotics. And also things like robotic-assisted surgery, or the semiconductor manufacturers that build the chips that underpin the AI revolution, and also things like cybersecurity, as that becomes increasingly important as AI continues to take a bigger part in our lives.
Yeah, and what type of investor or advisor might be attracted to ETFs from your firm?
All of our strategies are actively managed, so we're looking for to add hopefully alpha or better risk-adjusted returns to clients' portfolios. So if you're looking for an approach that's high conviction, or you're looking to have strategies be actively managed and be different from some of our other competitors out there, then Pictet ETFs may be for you.
Ben Becker, Pictet Asset Management, thank you so much for joining us today on First Look ETF.
Thanks again for having me.
Every so often, a new ETF family arrives that is more than just another product launch. It is a statement. Along those lines, Truth Social's newest ETFs are stepping into the spotlight with a bold identity and a clear mission. Today, we are unpacking the strategy behind this unique ETF lineup. We are very pleased to welcome Steve Neamtz, president with Yorkville America Equities. Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
Hey, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, you're very welcome. So let's first break this down. What is the core mission behind Truth Social ETFs? How many do you have, and how do you see this lineup differentiating itself in a crowded thematic ETF marketplace, aside from the name, which differentiates itself off the bat?
It does. These are Truth Social ETFs, sponsored by Yorkville America, are America First themed ETFs. They're built around the U.S. innovation, security, economic strength of the United States. It is true onshoring. It is truly America First. And those are 5 ETFs we launched back at the end of December on the New York Stock Exchange, which we're very excited about, that give investors the opportunity to have building blocks, to build portfolios that are very focused in 5 different thematic areas, all being America First.
Makes a lot of sense. Can you break down what some of those areas are in detail?
Absolutely, and we're pulling apart subsections very specifically. These are rules-based, criteria-driven baskets of securities that have been assembled into indexes that are disseminated every day by market vectors. So these are index tracking ETFs. They were built to pull apart those specific thematic areas. So we have what's called red state REITs, focusing on Republican voting, traditionally Republican voting states, in real estate investment trusts available from those areas. We have American energy and security, security and defense, next frontiers, which is the cutting edge companies, the true innovators in America. And then we have the tried and true American icons. And these portfolios, some will be purely focused on growth, and others will have a combination of growth and income, and others, like the REIT product, will have will have an emphasis on income.
I mean, obviously right now there's a lot going on geopolitically. We just have the war in the Middle East. Where are you seeing the strongest investor demand right now? And then how do your latest ETF launches align with some of the themes or asset classes that these investors may be gravitating towards?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's very interesting because when you take everything that's going on in the world and then you look as an investor at how can I best structure my portfolio to participate both today but over the long term. Yes, these could be used tactically, but they're really building blocks. So investing, allocate, hold, and realize that growth over time. But, security and defense, the ones that are getting the most attention today, given what's going on geopolitically, security and defense is the highest asset gathering one thus far. And it's followed by, sure enough, next frontiers, because investors are so interested in all of the innovative companies and cutting edge opportunities that exist out there. What's further interesting about that to me is that they're not all going to perform in lockstep. And that's the benefit of diversifying a portfolio and pulling apart different areas of the S&P 500.
Yeah, and the ones you mentioned, the sector's definitely making sense right now. Quickly, before we let you go, how do you see investors then and advisors potentially using Truth Social ETFs inside of their overall investment portfolios?
Yeah, I think that the advisors and investors will look at these and be very able to discern how these very mandate-specific, criteria-driven ETFs can fit. And they'll be pulling apart allocation out of their core S&P 500 holding to make investments into these various areas so they can get a bit more alpha opportunity, a bit more return opportunity relative to the broad market. And that'll be exciting for advisors and investors.
We'll see how it all plays out. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today on First Look ETF.
Thank you so much.
So would you like to know what the world's top value investors are buying? The Pabrai Wagons ETF, the ticker WAGN, Wagon, turns that question into an investable strategy. It follows the wagon of high conviction picks from elite managers and bundles them into one ETF. So let's break down how it works and what makes this approach stand out. We want to welcome Mohnish Pabrai, portfolio manager with Pabrai Wagons ETF. Mohnish, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, before we talk about your ETF, let's begin with your firm's unique investment approach and your Circle of Wagons philosophy. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, so the term Circle the Wagons is a 19th century term that comes from when the pioneers were moving west. And in order to protect themselves against attacks by the Native Americans and other robbers and invaders was to basically circle the wagons and then have where the most precious cargo they had was at the center of the circle, and then try to defend as best as you could. And so we use that analogy in the Wagons Fund because in the equity markets, if you go back and look for the last 100 years or more, just about 2 to 4% of companies are responsible for 95% of the returns that the market has generated. So it is the few great businesses that have led to these great outcomes. And that is why when you index and own the entire market, you do pretty well, but most of that return is coming from a very small sliver of companies. And so at Pabrai Wagons Fund, our approach is to identify what we think are great businesses. And then basically keep them. Don't try to trade in and out of them. And we actually don't know which ones are the crown jewels. But over time, those crown jewels become apparent, and we just circle the wagons around the portfolio and keep going. And so it's tax efficient and everything else.
The Pabrai Wagons ETF, your ticker WAGN, WAGN, was recently converted from a mutual fund to an ETF. First of all, congrats on that. Why did you convert to an ETF, and what types of investments does Wagn hold?
ETF is superior to having a mutual fund in many different ways. The first is we get rid of all the 12B1 fees, so we don't have to play the platforms like Schwab and Fidelity and so on. So our fees went down. What our investors pay has gone down by around 25% by being an ETF, which is great. And the second big advantage is that it's accessible globally. The mutual fund was limited only to US investors. We can have Canadian investors and investors in various other parts of the world, which we were not able to service before. And the Wagons Fund portfolio is a portfolio of what we consider the great businesses bought at great prices around the world. And we have a few themes in terms of the businesses we own. For example, our most recent bet was we bought the entire Mark Leonard Constellation software universe from Toronto and other places. And Mark Leonard has built a great business with acquiring software companies, but because of the threat of AI, which I think is unfounded, the stock got taken out back and shot. And so we were able to get in on what is a great long-term 20+% compounder at a very attractive multiple. So that's an example of what we own. We also own metallurgical coal miners because, again, these are hated and unloved, but they're very cash generative, and they're buying back their shares or sending us dividends, which is also great. And we own a airport operator in Turkey, which operates 15 airports in 8 countries, a great monopoly business. And then we have financial services exposure in India, which is similar to kind of investing in something like Schwab in 1980, just as the whole IRA and 401k boom was taking off here in the US. So these are some of like a snapshot, what we own.
And finally, what types of investors and advisors might be drawn to the Pabrai Wagons ETF?
I think the folks who would be drawn to us would be folks who appreciate a value-driven philosophy, which is not purely trying to buy cheap stocks, but trying to buy great businesses at points in time when they're hated and unloved, and then holding on to them for a long period. So it's a go anywhere ETF. And if you look at our exposures, we have global exposures. We have some exposure in India, we have some exposure in Turkey, we have some exposure in Canada, Europe, and the US. And so it's a global exposure, it's well diversified, but there are like 4 or 5 major themes in what we're invested in.
All right. And with that, we will wrap it up. Thank you, Mohnish. We appreciate your time today here on First Look ETF.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that does it for today's episode of First Look ETF. If you enjoyed the show, please tell us in the comments section below and by hitting the like button. Want to give a big thanks to all of our guests, along with Bilal Little at the New York Stock Exchange. Be sure to check out etfcentral.com to learn more. I'm Stephanie Stanton with ETF Guide. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.